Welcome to Daily Grace. We're glad you're with us. This is where we grab hold of what God holds out for us, which is His always new and ever fresh and perfectly powerful grace for our day in Christ. Today, we're delighted to have Courtney Johnson with us. Courtney, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, Courtney and Brian have been part of Grace for a long time, and we're going to talk about several different things with her. But first, tell us about how long you've been at Grace.
We have been at Grace for 13 years.
So did you come before we moved?
We visited
In the
when
theater.
you guys were still at the theater.
Yeah.
Yes. And then, which was about a month before you moved, we were coming to look at houses on Saturdays and check out churches on Sundays. And so by the time Brian moved here before I did, by the time Brian got here, you guys were in the new building.
We're already
so,
here.
yes, it was late April.
Yep,
So, yeah.
that's right, April of '07. Well, we're so glad that the Lord has led you both here.
Yes.
And all three of your kids have been born in Kinston.
Greenville, technically.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. So while you live
But
in
yeah,
Kinston, you're right.
That's
you're
right. That's right.
Yep, yep. And this is great. So also, what do you do at Grace? You guys, you lead a house church together.
We lead house
lead.
church. I serve on the worship team, and we serve in the children's ministry.
Right.
So, yeah.
In during the school year, but also you're a big part of VBS
Right. Yes.
for the last couple of years.
Help with VBS for the last few years. Kelly finally reined me in on that, and but I love it. It's so much fun, and more fun than I ever thought it would be. So.
VBS has become the funnest week of the summer, and I think
So
the
great.
adult leaders are more sad than the kids.
Yes,
that
that
it
it didn't happen. Absolutely. The leader lounge.
So we'll do a whole month next year, and no, I'm kidding.
I mean,
Okay, one last thing though on your involvement at Grace. So this year, for the first time, you got to do something new in the summer, even though not VBS.
Right. I got to go with the youth to Snowbird, which was super exciting. So a week away in the mountains, or 5 days, I guess, in the mountains, and we only had a couple of medical emergencies.
It's
and
true.
But everybody had a blast. Got to go whitewater rafting for the first time ever.
Really?
And yes, and I got to see Andrew McKnight fall flat on his stomach in the water trying to jump from the raft, and it was totally worth the price of admission. So, agreed.
He does that a lot. Hang out with
Yeah.
him more.
It was just so entertaining.
Oh, he actually came home saying how much fun the whitewater rafting was with
Such
you
a
guys.
blast. Such a blast. Yes.
Oh, that was so good. Okay, so one of the things that you do and you're known for is that you homeschool 3 kids at 3 different ages.
Right.
How is that?
Fun. No, it is. It is a lot. It is a good time, and time well spent
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
It takes a hair bit of planning, but we are part of a classical conversations community, which is more of a schoolhouse model where one room schoolhouse used to you would have kids of all ages. So it's the core of the information that they're learning is the same. So that makes it easier. Then I just have to kind of differentiate for math and for reading and things like that. But it is tough some days.
Yeah.
It really does stretch us, and right now we feel like that's what God has called us to, and we know that it's not for everybody, but we definitely do love it and are enjoying it in this season. So.
That is great. Now, do you? I have one question on scheduling. Like
Ah.
I know some homeschool moms that start early in the morning and or start late because their kids like to sleep in. Where are your kids?
We
Or where
start
are you?
early. Yeah, we are. School starts at 8:30.
Okay,
And
so that's
because Whit is up at 6:30, so we might as well go ahead and get started. He has curtains on a metal rod in his room, and we hear shink, shink, and we know that Whit's up. And so he wakes up in a great mood, and the other 2 are starting to sleep a little later, the older that they get. But I still think it's a reasonable start time. I still like to remind them that their public and private school counterparts are already at school dressed.
Yeah, dress.
By the time that I'm requiring them to be down the hall in our schoolroom.
Yeah,
So
that's right. That's right.
they're still living the dream. So.
Living the dream. Well, I tell that to my kids too. Okay, so the other thing that's really fun about you, Courtney, is this new adventure that you've been on for several years online with an
Right.
online business called the Kitchen Garten.
Correct.
With the T
With the
in
T.
Garten.
That's right.
How come?
So it's the German word for garden, and everything else was taken when I went to go buy my domain name, really is. But I spent a lot of time in Germany growing up.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about Germans, a lot of the times they do live in apartments or duplexes or something in the city, but they will have a garden plots outside of town, which is a little garden house with a row garden, and there's just plot, 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 and they can go and stay the night there. They have rooms, like little kitchens, yes, but they have a full big garden. We had several German grandmothers while we lived there, and they would have like rabbit houses in the back where they raised rabbits.
Wow.
It's just a different. So seeing that, my grandparents always gardened. It made sense, and so it's been 5 years of growing that website, and
Yeah, so it's basically you're bringing knowledge and wisdom and learning and color pictures.
Yes.
And lots of videos. Like just for the regular person who might be interested in stuff outside my house.
Correct.
Is that mostly what it is?
Basically, yes. Like learning how to garden, because I'm continually learning. I'm technically a master gardener from having taken the course here at our cooperative extension, which is a fantastic course.
It's so good here, yeah.
Yes, it's phenomenal, and the people that you meet are great. But yes, so it's putting out tutorials and instructions on how to garden or how to create your own raised beds or how to use those vegetables that you've harvested, whether that's freezing and preserving them or putting them in recipes. It's just all kinds of helps.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of trial and error on what goes over well and what doesn't.
What's something that just doesn't go over well?
Oh gosh, any kind of like little gardeny craft doesn't tend to go over as well with my audience. But what's so funny is that you just never know what Google will like. A lot of the times we're just kind of writing to what we think Google will rank well for. And my best ranking post of all time with I can't remember, 80,000 views or something like this, was how to prune basil. Like that's what kind of launched it all. It's so funny.
Really?
Like, and that was about 2 years in, and all of a sudden that just took off. It was really wild. Who knew? People wanted to know how to prune their basil.
How to prune basil. I didn't even know that you could grow basil. I just thought it came from the spice
I
rack
mean, yes.
Food Line, but I shouldn't
super
say that.
easy to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, very easy.
So this is maybe lining up with a little bit of a cultural move with like we were kind of talking about this a bit beforehand, but like the value of gardens and the idea of where we get our food, kind of more as a culture. Just talk a bit about that.
Sure. It's something that I've always felt really strongly about, knowing where your food comes from. And as we've had children and wanting to teach them where food comes from and that you can grow things in your very own backyard and that you have to be wise to where you live and what grows well where you are and what grows well in the season that you're currently in, I think is really important. And also, I think it gives us a good view of how difficult it is to grow food. Farmers do really have a tough job, and we have to constantly combat pests, squirrels. Get a dog.
Do a shooting one on how to shoot a squirrel.
Yes, I know several people who make a hobby of shooting squirrels to keep them out of the garden, but we have a dog, and she really earns her keep. That's what we say her job is, to keep the squirrels out, and she does a good job. So, And so just teaching people to appreciate that, and we had started kind of a branch of the kitchen garden summer before last where we were actually building raised beds and installing them in people's yards.
Oh, wow.
And so we've done that I can't try to keep that side small because that is a lot of labor.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of labor on Brian. Because I designed
some teenage boys you could hire.
That
They work cheap.
that is definitely something I will be calling you about. But we go and install them in people's yards because some people are just busy, but they want a garden. They don't know how to get started, and if they're not willing to or not able to build it themselves, we like to help them out. But we do. It's very small scale.
And a raised bed because then you don't have to bend over
Um,
as much? Like, is that why the raised bed?
The raised bed is really more about maintenance, much fewer weeds, and you can control the soil. You don't have to worry about building up your soil if it's really kind of crummy where you live. So you can control what you put into it, and there's virtually no weeding.
That's great.
So it really does make gardening effortless.
Right,
So,
which is what
which is what we're going for. We don't want it to be a hardship.
Yeah, that's it. So in all of this kind of sort of the kitchen garden and you, I mean, 5 years
Yes.
And before then, you were teaching in an online school, the Potter's House for homeschool kids.
Yes, the Potter School.
So
Yeah.
the Potter School, yeah. What
Yeah,
did I say?
it's okay. House.
Anyway. Potter's House. No, the Potter's School.
It's a song.
Thanks. And then you made that transition. So
Yes.
that's like an entrepreneurial jump.
It really was. And I had been wanting to do it for a few years, but hadn't been able to really land on what I could write about. Because I did teach English grammar and writing. So I felt like...
I know every time I send a church email, I worry about you.
I did feel like, well, I have some skills to offer here. So really trying to decide what to write about, because there's this whole realm of, interests that everybody has, their own interests, so which one to hone in on. And then just selling my husband on this idea of, hey, let's spend a little money to buy a website, and I'll write, and it won't make anything for a while, but it could. And it really was a leap of faith, because I think statistically a lot of people do start out in this realm of online entrepreneurship, whether that is a small business or a blog, a website. We call it content creation, because some people think blogging's not a real thing.
No, it's true.
But you really are just putting yourself out there to be commented on by other people, and so you have to have a hair of a thicker skin. Thankfully, gardening's not too
controversial.
Not too controversial, so I don't get a lot of that. But some, but it's been a joy, and it's been a joy to reach people that I never would have spoken to. I have some really faithful fans who write the kindest emails and just leave encouraging comments, and so it really is like a balm and an affirmation when those come in. So.
Well, and that's kind of like, so shifting into actually not just providing a really good service for folks, but also really wanting to treat people as people, and the relational side. Like, how are you and Brian, or how, I guess you more, but like as an ambassador for Christ in this? Like, it's not a Christian gardening website, but you're a Christian who runs a gardening website. How do you do that?
Oh, I just try to exude Christ in what I write and in how I treat people who reach out to me, because I do get, emails almost every day asking for advice or saying maybe something I suggested didn't work. And so it's all in how I choose to interact with them, and how maybe I don't give them the initial response I'm thinking about, and I just have to really pray and think about it. And sometimes that is consulting Brian and be like, babe, what do you think I should say here? And and he is a thinker, and he guides me well. He's a great.
He is a good thinker.
Yeah, he thinks on things very deeply, more deeply than I do. So I appreciate that.
But you deliver them with more oomph and pizzazz.
The delivery is different.
Brian's dry.
Much less British when it comes from me. So. But I do love that about his personality. So.
Well, it's what it is. I mean, dry humor is funny humor, and when it's
the Lord knew.
Yeah, he really did, because so you guys, I mean, you've really sensed God's leading.
Yes.
And you sense his blessing, and
yes.
tell us just a little bit about that.
He has just kept us on course. There have been times where I'm like, I don't know, maybe we should try these different things, because there is a lot of trial and error going on, and he really has led me in that, because there's a million courses or a million products you can buy, and he's led me in wisdom with what really will help and what really will not, and also just faithfully growing it a little at a time. For example, I'll just share that in the first year, I would get excited if 50 people looked at my website in a day. Like, that was big news, you know. And honestly, since the pandemic started, there's been a huge increase in interest in gardening, because people are home. They have time for gardening more, but so now it's averaging more of like 4,000 a day.
Wow.
And so just to see him growing that has just been something to praise him for, and to say, I'm glad that we stuck with it, Lord, and that you gave us some fortitude, because it really is just an interesting line of work. Very, it's great to be able to do it at home, and that seems really great all the time, but then at the same time,
well, like when you're making all those videos, how many times do you have to stop because a kid comes running through screaming?
I was just editing one before we came here today, and I had two clips that looked similar, and I realized the second clip I needed to trash because you could see Whit coming in the background and me giving him the evil eye. But at the same time, like honestly, my audience would have probably preferred the video where Whit popped in. So
I think there's room for like a little Whit character.
Yes.
On and Molly and Becton maybe.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Maybe not for today. But see, I'm not in marketing.
Well, it's funny though, because Molly likes to garden as well, and even through this venture, our kids have seen us doing a job that's a bit different than a 9-to-5 experience. But even last year, she grew her own herbs and sold them for $1 a bundle. And so I feel like it's teaching them to think a little out of the box and using what you have in your own backyard to have a little business.
No doubt. So last kind of thought is when maybe there's different people that want to work with you, or sponsors or companies or whatever, how do you grid? And maybe in the gardening world, it's not so bad. Like, how do you grid? Like, oh, I'd rather not work with that company, or like either just where they're positioned in the market, or maybe even something more like for Christ. Like, there's something about them that's
I haven't had any off-putting proposals. I have done sponsored content for some companies, and normally it's just, is it something that I use? Is this something that I really believe is beneficial? I do believe in being a good steward of the environment, so that's something that I feel the Lord has called us to, and so I do think about that when a company approaches me. Is this something that that is pouring back into the earth? Because you may not know this, but the soil in your yard is a living organism. Like, there's millions of organisms living in your soil. And so, and I think God has created this amazing thing that we can grow food and beautiful blooms and just cultivate things in. And I want to treat it well for the longevity of, my children's children, and just so that it produces well.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So basil was your number one. How about compost? Does that get big hits?
It does. It has seasons.
Oh, yeah.
The heat of summer is not that season. So typically in the fall, people get a little bit more, I don't know why, conscious about composting. But yeah, we have some good composting pieces that people look at. And so just learning to create different things as well. So, how to compost, what not to compost, because there's a whole list of that kind of stuff. Or like
my old VCR.
Probably not. Or meat and cheese. Yeah. So like food things that you shouldn't compost. Avocado peels don't really break down all that great in a compost. And some people say you shouldn't put citrus fruits. Huh. Yeah. So.
Well, I obviously didn't get to that part of the website and look at that video, but that's really fun. Well, okay, I mean, like with the recipes and then the gardening and the kind of raised beds and composting and videos and all this, I have an idea for you that might work in the future. I just feel like with everything there on the website, I think I have something that could help you. It's called lawn design and yard art. I think we've got that up on the screen right now.
Oh, that is.
Put that up there.
Is that your yard? That's not your yard.
That's my yard.
Is it really?
We came home from vacation and it was very long, and I thought, I'm going to have a little fun with
that is. You know who needs to see this is Wes Atkinson, because he had like the diamond pattern in his yard for a while, and we would ride by. I was like, he doesn't have children.
No,
that's
he does
why
not
his yard
have kids.
looks
No, this is just the corkscrew. Looks like
that's
elaborate.
beautiful, though. That is the coolest.
It's just a corkscrew.
I'll show this to Brian, and he'll be, because we got a big front yard with lots of grass.
You can do it, and a kid can do it even. Like,
yes.
If I can do it, a kid can do it.
Yes.
When you're ready for the guest, we can.
I like it.
I'll be over there.
Lawn art. I like it. Lawn design.
I don't know. Yard art, lawn design. There it is. Courtney, I don't know. I wouldn't take me up on that offer if I were you.
You would be surprised. There's probably a really niche audience for this that's interested in it.
I don't know. Anyway, well, thank you for coming to share a little bit about your whole kind of life, but also this fun thing that God's got you involved in, and that you're using for Him and blessing folks in the community, and just taking a risk. I mean, this is part of where we live. Yeah. So we really appreciate it. It's fun just to see how God is working differently in our lives. So thank you for being here, y'all. Thank you for joining us on Daily Grace, and we'll see you the next time.